Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. I was alone until my stepson came home early. House felt different when it was empty. Sarah had grown accustomed to the silence, but tonight it seemed to press against her chest like a weight she couldn't shake. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily, marking the hours that stretched endlessly before her. She stood by the kitchen window, watching raindrops race down the glass, each one carrying a piece of her reflection away into the darkness. 3 years. That's how long it had been since David left for college. And 2 years since her husband Michael had passed away suddenly from a heart attack. The house that once buzzed with laughter and conversation now echoed with memories that felt both precious and painful. At 42, Sarah found herself caught between being a widow and a stepmother to a young man who barely knew how to talk to her anymore. The phone rang, cutting through her thoughts like a blade through silk. Sarah's heart jumped. Calls this late usually meant bad news. She hurried to answer, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. "Sarah?" The voice was familiar, warm but strained. "It's David." Her stepson's voice sent a flutter through her chest. "David? Sweetheart, what's wrong? It's almost midnight." "I know. I'm sorry. I need to come home. Tonight. I'm already on the road." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. Something in his voice made her stomach clench with worry. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I'll explain when I get there. I just ... I couldn't stay at school another night. I'll be home in about 2 hours." The line went dead, leaving Sarah staring at the phone in her trembling hand. David hadn't been home since Christmas, and their conversations had grown shorter and more distant with each passing month. She'd attributed it to the natural progression of a young man finding his independence, but something in his voice tonight suggested deeper currents were at play. Sarah rushed upstairs to prepare his room, her heart racing with a mixture of concern and anticipation she couldn't quite name. As she changed the sheets on his bed, she caught her reflection in the dresser mirror. Her dark hair had grown longer since Michael's death, framing her face in soft waves. She'd lost weight from stress and irregular eating, but her eyes still held the warmth that Michael had fallen in love with all those years ago. The sound of tires on gravel announced David's arrival at exactly 2 in the morning. Sarah peered through the front window and saw him sitting in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, his head bowed. Even in the dim porch light, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his body seemed to curve inward as if protecting something fragile inside. She opened the door before he could knock, and when he looked up at her, Sarah's breath caught. At 21, David had grown into a man during his time away. His dark hair, so much like his father's, was longer now, touching his collar. His eyes, those incredible green eyes that had always been uniquely his own, were red-rimmed and filled with a pain that made Sarah's heart ache. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, and without thinking, she stepped forward and pulled him into her arms. David's resolve crumbled. He wrapped his arms around her, his face buried in her shoulder, and she felt his body shake with silent sobs. Sarah held him tighter, her own tears threatening to fall. This wasn't the confident young man who'd left for college 3 years ago. This was someone broken, someone who needed healing. "Come inside," she murmured against his hair. "You're home now. You're safe." They sat at the kitchen table, 2 cups of tea growing cold between them, as David finally found his voice. "Her name was Emma," he began, his fingers tracing patterns on the wooden surface. "We were together for 8 months. I thought she was the one." Sarah's heart clenched. First heartbreak was always the deepest cut, she remembered. "What happened?" I found out she was seeing someone else. My roommate, actually. They'd been together for months while she was telling me she loved me. David's voice cracked. I feel so stupid, Sarah. So incredibly stupid. You're not stupid, Sarah said firmly, reaching across the table to cover his hand with hers. You're brave. You opened your heart to someone. That takes courage. David looked up at her, his eyes searching her face. How do you do it? How do you deal with losing someone you love? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with shared grief. Sarah felt her own pain rise in her throat, the loneliness, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, the way she sometimes caught herself setting 2 plates for dinner out of habit. Some days are harder than others, she admitted, but you learn to carry the love instead of just the loss. Your father taught me that love doesn't disappear when someone leaves. It changes form, but it doesn't disappear. David's thumb traced over her knuckles, and Sarah felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the tea. I missed you, he said quietly. I missed coming home to you. Something in his tone made Sarah's pulse quicken. She looked at their joined hands, at the way his touch seemed to fit perfectly with hers. I missed you too, she whispered. The house feels so empty without you. David stood suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked to the window, his back to her, and Sarah could see the conflict in the set of his shoulders. I shouldn't have stayed away so long, he said. I was angry after Dad died. Angry at him for leaving, angry at myself for not being here more, angry at you for... He trailed off, but Sarah needed to hear the rest. Angry at me for what? David turned around, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. For being so beautiful, for being so kind, for making me feel things I shouldn't feel. The words hung in the air between them like a confession, dangerous and electric. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She stood slowly, her legs feeling uncertain beneath her. David, she began, but he held up a hand. I know it's wrong, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I know I'm supposed to see you as my stepmother, and nothing more. But Sarah, I can't stop thinking about you. I couldn't concentrate at school, because all I could think about was coming home to you. And when Emma betrayed me, you were the only person I wanted to talk to. You were the only person who could make me feel better. Sarah's world tilted. She'd felt it too. The way their conversations had grown deeper over the years. The way his absence had left a hole in her life that went beyond missing a stepson. The way her heart raced when he called. The way she'd catch herself wondering what he was doing, who he was with. I don't know what to say, she whispered. David took a step closer, and Sarah could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me you feel it too. Sarah's mind raced. This was dangerous territory, a path that could destroy everything they built as a family. But her heart was thundering, and when she looked at David, she didn't see the 18-year-old boy who'd left for college. She saw a man who'd been shaped by loss, who understood pain, who looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I feel it, she admitted, her voice barely audible. God help me, I feel it too. David's eyes closed in relief, and when he opened them again, they were filled with something that made Sarah's knees weak. I don't know what this means, he said. I don't know what we're supposed to do with this. Neither do I, Sarah replied, but she found herself moving closer to him, drawn by something stronger than logic or propriety. They stood facing each other in the dim kitchen, the space between them charged with possibilities and forbidden desires. David raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she didn't, he cupped her face gently. "You're so beautiful," he whispered. I'd thought that for years, but I was too scared to admit it, even to myself. Sarah's eyes fluttered closed at his touch. "This is complicated," she breathed. "I know," David said, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "But I'm tired of pretending I don't love you. Not as a stepmother, but as a woman. As the woman who held our family together when everything fell apart." Sarah's heart soared and plummeted at the same time. "David, we can't just— I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight," he interrupted gently. "I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this isn't as wrong as it seems. Maybe this is just love finding a way." Sarah opened her eyes and found herself drowning in his gaze. "What about people? What would they think?" "I don't care about people," David said fiercely. "I care about you. I care about us. I care about not wasting any more time being afraid of what might happen if we're honest about what we feel." Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks, and David wiped them away with his thumbs. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too," he said. "But I'm more scared of losing you again. I'm more scared of going back to school and pretending I don't love you. I'm more scared of watching you spend the rest of your life alone in this house, believing that love is something that only happens once." Sarah's resolve was crumbling. Every rational thought in her head was screaming warnings, but her heart was singing. Here was someone who saw her, who wanted her, who understood her grief and her loneliness. Someone who'd grown into a man who could love her completely, without reservation. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Neither do I," David admitted, leaning his forehead against hers. "But I know I want to try. I know I want to find out what this could be." Sarah closed her eyes and let herself imagine it a life where she wasn't alone, where love was possible again, where the house was filled with laughter and warmth. A life where she could love and be loved by someone who truly saw her. "Okay," she whispered, the word feeling like a leap off a cliff. "Okay, let's try." David's smile was radiant, transforming his face from heartbroken to hopeful in an instant. "Really?" Sarah nodded, her own smile breaking through her tears. "Really, but slowly. We take this slowly. As slow as you need," David promised, and then he was kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her nose, each kiss feeling like a promise. Sarah felt something she thought was lost forever: hope. Not just for herself, but for both of them. They were two people who'd known loss, who understood pain, who could maybe teach each other how to heal. As they stood in the kitchen where she'd spent so many lonely nights, Sarah realized that sometimes love didn't follow the rules. Sometimes it found you in the most unexpected places, wearing the most unexpected faces. Sometimes it asked you to be brave enough to redefine what family meant, what love looked like, what was possible. David pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I love you, Sarah. I love you so much it terrifies me." "I love you too," she replied, and saying the words felt like coming home. "I love you too, David." Outside, the rain had stopped, and the first hints of dawn were creeping across the sky. Sarah looked at David, her stepson, her friend, her unexpected love, and felt the future stretching out before them like an unwritten story. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, questions, people who wouldn't understand. But as David took her hand and led her toward the stairs, Sarah knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. She was no longer alone in the big house. She was no longer a widow marking time. She was a woman in love, and love, she was learning, was worth any risk. The house that had felt like a tomb for 2 years suddenly felt like a home again. And as they climbed the stairs together, Sarah knew that sometimes the heart wants what it wants, And sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that no one sees coming. David paused at the top of the stairs, their hands still intertwined. "Are you sure about this?" he asked one more time. Sarah looked at him. This man who'd grown from the boy she'd helped raise, who'd become someone she could love completely, and felt certainty settle in her chest like a warm glow. "I'm sure," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new possibilities. But tonight, Sarah was no longer alone. Tonight, love had found its way home.